All right, it looks like we are at noon, so we are going to go ahead and get started and be respectful of everybody's time today. My name is Nicole Miller, and I am part of the WaterWise program at the University of Arizona's Cochise County's Cooperative Extension. You're here for the Constructing an Earthbag Cistern with Jim and Jess today for our brown bag seminar. Couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We are recording this. It will be available on YouTube once we do a slight bit of editing at the end of the day today. And then I am also assisted by, or I am assisting more so, Marianne Capehart. She is our community program coordinator. She coordinates all of these brown bag seminars and plans them out and does all the amazing things behind the scenes for that. My housekeeping will include that I'd ask that you mute yourself, or you are muted and you will stay that way until the Q&A section of our presentation today. That way we don't get a lot of feedback or inadvertent noises in the background and you can enjoy our speakers. I will allow you to unmute yourselves at the Q&A section so that you can ask those questions. But if you think of them along the way and need to ask them so you don't forget them, you can type them into the chat box and we will get to those at some point. And then you will be receiving a post survey via email, and I'll also put it in the chat toward the end of the presentation today. We would greatly appreciate it if you take a quick moment to fill out that survey. It's about 10 questions long. It helps us to provide a better presentation and our services to the community. So I believe that is all I have for today. I believe I'm going to pass it to Marianne.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming. We're very excited to delve into the world of off-grid sustainable living today with Jim and Jessica Bonilla. We had the pleasure of having them on our 2019 Off the Grid tour for the WaterWise program. And we're very happy to learn more about what they've done since then. All sorts of amazing things happen out there on that land. You can see a lot of it talked about, described in detail on the Green Team Project YouTube channel, which is awesome. That's very honest, very real, and very informative. So yeah, you'll see, I think, the crowning achievement so far of their cool off-the-grid property, which is this Earthbag constructed cistern for large-scale rain harvesting. Despite the fact we didn't have a lot of rain this last year, I still believe that if you can get a large enough tank and store it before you kind of get going on living off grid on rain, you can do amazing things and have a wonderful resource to have at your fingertips, which is rainwater, which is very high quality water. All right, well, without further ado, I will give you Jim and Jessica. Thank you so much for coming.
All right, hello.
Hey, everyone.
Glad to be a part of this event. Sharing that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Get it started.
Let's get it started. We're going all fancy with the PowerPoint presentation here. So constructing an Earthbag cistern. We have a channel, YouTube channel, Green Dream Project. I'm Jim.
And I'm Jessica.
We are married. We're in our late 30s, early 40s. We won't say which one's which.
Now, when we got started on this crazy off-grid journey, one reason we did that was because we just wanted a better life for ourselves. You know, we wanted to be happier and healthier, and we really wanted a life that was just filled with meaning and purpose.
And, you know, we studied permaculture. We both have PDCs. You know, that's all about not only making a happier life for ourselves, but making the environment, the world around us a better place. And that includes, you know, helping people, helping the environment, and bringing more happiness,
That's what we try to
affecting
do.
the world around us.
So to do that, we decided to completely change the way we were living at the time. We did take some permaculture courses with Jeff Lawton. And then we sold our house in the city and we moved out here to the country on a 40-acre parcel of land in Cochise County, Arizona. So now we're out here and we're trying to build this sustainable off-grid homestead.
So there you go. Just get a couple of PDCs and then you're ready to move off grid. Yeah, so one of the big things that we needed to get going, I mean, when we moved out here, was just there was absolutely nothing out here. So we had to start from scratch with all of our basic needs. And one of those is getting water. So you can see the two poly tanks behind our cistern over there. I mean, that's kind of what we used for our water storage until we built the cistern. Now, this is like one of our first really big Earthbag projects. You know, it's a Earthbag Cistern. It's a total of 8 feet high, 5 feet underground, 3 feet above ground, 20 feet total width, and it has a storage capacity of nearly 14,000 gallons. We built it by hand. Multiple materials going into it, not just earth bags. We're going to break that down a little later, but we'll be using it for all of our household needs, drinking, bathing, everything.
Yep. And the reason we built it, one, we're trying to be more self-reliant. So, you know, the whole reason we got started living this way was so that we didn't to be so dependent on other people. And this whole project was kind of an exercise in doing something for ourselves, something really important to us, and something to take care of our own needs. So that was really empowering.
So, you know, the goal is to be really as sustainable as possible. And water is absolutely key to living off grid. You got to know what your water needs are, especially in an arid climate like Arizona. You know, water is so definitely one of the most important things to think about. I mean, you know, large portions of the southwestern United States has been experiencing an incredible drought in recent years for a while. You know, that's due to the mismanagement of the natural water resources. You know, wells are an option, but they're not necessarily a guarantee of getting water. When we actually always when we contacted well drillers, we did contact some well drillers about the possibility of putting in a well, and the quotes we got said they could be going to low as 300 to 400 feet in this area to hit water, but plan on at least 600. And that could have been tens of thousands of dollars, maybe as much as $30,000 without any guarantee of actually hitting water. So that's a huge upfront cost with no guarantees. And you know, there's always news stories and reports about water levels dropping, especially in the Wilcox area. You know, I think we just read a story recently where wells there, the water level has been dropping 7, 8, sometimes even 10 feet per year.
Yeah, and that's just a little, Wilcox is just a little north of us.
So kind of scary. It's nice to have a well as a possibility, but not as but you know, not have to be reliant on it.
Right. And another huge reason for us doing rainwater harvesting is just to be more mindful and aware of our water usage. So, being able to see the water really helps with that, not just when it comes out of the tap, but every time it rains, we can see the water going into the cistern, and we can, look inside and see where the level of the water is at any time. So it really helps us stay more connected. And also, it encourages us to track the weather patterns, and we're a lot more interested in that. And so we're more connected to nature. And the whole, rainwater harvesting, especially in a drier climate, it requires you to think more long term because you have to plan for times of scarcity. So it really changes the way we think and makes us think more long term about the environment and people and other living things that we have to share these natural resources with.
Now, cost. Everyone wants to know how much money did this cistern cost. You have to decide what you're willing to pay and how you're willing to pay it. So building an earthbag cistern, the cost is going to be much more significant with labor and time. So we had to think we were able-bodied and young enough to devote the time and energy necessary to build an earthbag cistern, which took us about 3 months to do. Just the two of us working approximately 6 to 8 hours a day, hauling dirt around with wheelbarrows and stuff like that. And the total cost was about $2,500. It cost us probably a little bit more in the end just because of some experimentation that didn't work out. But all in all, if someone wanted to build a cistern like ours with the materials, it was about $2,500. Now, you have to figure into a cost of like maybe buying a water tank or a cistern. To buy a water tank that could hold about this much water would probably at least cost you around $16,000. But then, you'd have people that would come over, put it together for you. It'd be a really nice water tank, but you'd be paying a large upfront cost on that monetarily.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to weigh all those things, which works better for you.
So let's talk a little about how the cistern and how the whole system works. So rainwater falls from the sky, and we collect it off of a large rain roof that we had built previously. This is quite large. It's 2,200 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
So a large surface area to collect a lot of water from.
Now, as you can see here, this is part of our old gutter system, which was part of an experiment that didn't quite work out. But it'll pretty much, when we work the new gutter system, it'll pretty much do the same thing. And once we have the roof on, it'll go into gutters, which will empty out onto the roof of the cistern.
And there's our chunky clunky
You
gutter coming down.
You could see a better image of that.
But that empties out onto the roof of the cistern. And the roof of the cistern also collects its own rainwater from that surface.
All of that water from the roof, from a rain roof, from the roof of the cistern, that drains out into pipes that we have into the cistern. Those are covered by these strainers, removable strainers, which is very important in rainwater harvesting. Definitely, you want to keep any kind of debris or insects out of that water to keep it much cleaner and much safer to drink.
No icky water. And then at the bottom of our cistern, we have an outlet, which is connected to a pipe so that the water can come out so that we can use it.
I put in 2 4-inch PVC pipes that go into the cistern. And another big rule of rainwater harvesting is always plan for overflow. So, I don't know whether we'll ever get this thing filled up or not, but if we do, these pipes here will help manage it. And when the cistern fills up, water should flow out of those 4-inch pipes into a basin that will eventually build.
And we also have an access hatch at the top of the cistern. And that's just for if we need to get inside there to do any maintenance or cleaning.
So materials. Obviously, Earthbag is one of them. Is actually the main one. For us, we used woven polypropylene bags. Well, that's pretty much like if you want to build with earth bags, you want to make sure they're woven polypropylene, that they're not coated. Some of them kind of coat, and that makes them unbreathable. But we used misprinted grain seed bags from a packaging company. You can also use tubes like from Cal Earth or something like that. But for us, these were cheaper. They're like 20 to 25 cents per bag. And since they're misprinted bags, they would end up they couldn't get, but they couldn't be sold, so they'd probably only be tossed. So instead of tossing them, we were able to take it and turn these disposable bags into a permanent structure. In addition to the bags, we used a thick gauge 12.5 barbed wire, 4 points. Very important that you use a thicker barbed wire for such a construction, especially for this type or for our home and stuff like that.
Yep, and that goes in between each row of the bags.
And of course, our subsoil, you always want to do a test on the soil that you're going to be building with, especially kind of right where you're building with, because soil can differ so greatly from area to area. Our soil happens to be almost perfect for building with, which is like 30% clay, 70% sand.
And then over our Earthbag walls, we put a pond liner because we needed something to hold the water that would be waterproof. So we chose to do that. Made the most sense for us at that time as far as cost and time wise. So we got one that had a 40 mil thickness, nice and thick, heavy duty, reinforced, so that would be puncture resistant, and we made sure it would be safe for potable water.
And I just want to point out that the liner here, that 40 mil thickness liner, is really probably the most expensive part of the entire build. That liner itself probably was about half the price of the, the cistern, but we needed to make it so that, obviously earth bags themselves are not going to be, water would just penetrate right through this. So they needs to be watertight. And then the gabion, the Argabian, a massive addition to the Earthbag cistern. We used rebar that goes into the bags from the top and also from the bottom to kind of the top ones kind of go through the bags to help stabilize them above ground. And then we also have rebar that come out through the middle, and it gets attached to the remesh. And we got remesh going around the whole outside perimeter, steel wire to attach the rebar to the remesh, and then lots of rocks and urbanite.
Then for the roof, we ended up using some lumber, basically 2x10, just for roof supports. And I think we experimented with some other materials that didn't work out, but we ended up going with the lumber just because we knew we could build a roof with doing it that way. We've done it before.
Ferro cement. So we covered the 2x10 lumber with, I think, 4 layers of the stucco mesh, a lot of mesh. And then we ended up going over that with our ferro cement mixture, which is Portland cement and sand.
Yep, and just troweled it on. And then the plumbing. So we had pipes going in for the intake, pipes coming out. We had, well, the one at the bottom for the outlet, and then 2 pipes for overflow. And the bulkhead went down on our outlet pipe. We just needed something that would be an outer watertight outlet to make an opening.
And then the access hatch, one of the last things for this part of the build, is just made with scrap material, roofing sheet metal that I cut down that goes on top of a wood frame, and then special rebar handles that I bent and custom made. I'm kind of proud of that.
So now the building process, which quite extensive. It's a big project, but it started out with an excavation. We started out going underground, and we had a few holes dug. The one for the stern was 5 deep, about 20 feet wide. Plus, we had a trench put in our outlet pipe, which was then buried, and that will run to our house, which you can see in the picture. There's 2 other holes there, and that's for our house, which we're currently building. So this is all going to get piped right into our house.
Now, this is something I want to, kind of bring up about cost versus time. Originally, you were kind of thinking that you wanted to try and dig all these by hand, right?
Yes.
But looking back on it, it probably would have taken us close to a year or something to try and dig all these holes by hand. So that's where we had to take costs into the equation here and have someone come out with an excavator to dig these holes. I mean, it cost us about probably $800 up front, but saved us a ton of time, a ton of work. And it probably would have cost more to try and do it by hand, thinking all this time to dig all those, right?
Right. Plus there are very large rocks in there. So then we got started with preparing the base for the cistern, and that was an important part of that. We had to remove any rocks that could possibly puncture our liner. We didn't want any leaks, so we got that all leveled out. You can see in the picture there, we're using a water level to level the ground, and we added a layer of sand just to give it a nice smooth base, and then covered that with some tarps just for extra padding and protection.
And then the next was the Earthbag wall. Each of those bags is filled with subsoil directly from our land. Just add a little bit of water with the soil, mix it up, nothing special. We didn't add cement at all to the mix. Those get laid horizontally, one right after the other in course to form a circle. Then after each course, those get tamped solid, almost to mix like a solid block. After that course is done and tamped, then we use 2 strands of that 12.5 gauge barbed wire. That helps lock all the rows together. And you can see from the image, you want to stagger those bags so that the seams don't meet up. And that helps build much stronger walls.
Another important part of this is building it round. So we made basically a cylinder, and round walls really help provide more lateral support to the whole structure, which is important for this application, especially because it's going to be filled with water, and there's a lot of water is pretty heavy, so it needs that extra support.
So remember, when building with earth bags, you can do straight walls and stuff like that, but with earth bags, round is sound. Then we decided to put the cistern below ground, especially because we were using earth bags. We've seen other cisterns built that we could have been maybe try to do it above ground, but we decided to go below hand because that water is so heavy and there would be a lot of outward pressure on those walls. So we figured putting it below ground, that way it would have the support of the earth around it. And those earth bag walls did not really go right up and butt up against those walls that were dug out. We actually backfilled around the cistern as we built up, tamped it down to solid.
And one important tool we used was a pole compass while laying our earth bags. This helps to keep the walls plumb, so nice and straight going up. And it's just made out of chain link fence parts. So there's one vertical pole, which can rotate around, and then a horizontal pole, which we can raise up as we're building the walls up. And there's a bracket at the end, and that helps us to measure out and lay the bags right where they need to go.
Pole dancing is optional, not needed for earth bag building. Installing the liner. Oh, so we knew when we got this liner that it was going to be a beast, and it was. I mean, I forget the exact dimensions of this thing, but was it 27 feet by 27 feet? It was big, thick, and heavy. We were going to try and do it ourselves, but I think quickly, I mean, we just realized it was bulky, it was heavy. So we got some help from our neighbors that came out, and with a couple extra people, it just went a lot smoother, a lot faster. We got it done like almost right away. I mean, consider what that 40 mil thickness, that's pretty heavy. And we gave you can't really tell the finished product from this particular slide, but we wanted slack, a little bit of slack at the bottom and the walls. That way, when the water fills with the cistern, it's not pulling on the liner and possibly tearing it. So definitely we had to give it a little bit of slack. And this thing was, we purposely got it so big that it not only covered the inside walls, but wrapped actually around the outside of the walls. That way it would immediately protect the earth bags from UV light, which is so important to keep the integrity of the bags.
And then we built the gabion around our cistern on the portion that was above ground. There was about 3 feet that was above ground. So we wanted something there to support those walls. And it also acted as a little extra space on the top where we could build a gutter system to catch water off of the roof of the cistern. So this was a whole big process, just building the gabion. We wrapped 2 pieces of remesh around there and then had to connect it with the wires. And then the whole process of just filling it, which seemed simple at the time, but there was so much rocks. So luckily we could source a lot of it from around our property. We also found some urbanite chunks, just used smashed up concrete that we were able to use to fill it, but it did take a lot of work and a lot of time.
I honestly remember back on this and I thought like, oh, little gabion over there, no problem. Take a couple days to to build. It was a massive undertaking, and we needed so much materials. I actually had to go and pick up that busted up concrete, that urbanite. I think I had a few truckloads of that. I think I went out with our truck and brought in a few truckloads of rocks that I could scavenge along the roads and stuff like that. Yeah. It was it's a massive gabion for sure. Plumbing. So 5 inlet pipes going around the cistern. You can see 3 over here. There's 2 more on the other end. Those are 3-inch PVC pipes with, I want to point out, 90-degree elbows at the inlets. Now that's very important to have those 90s going into the cistern. That will help prevent light from getting into the cistern and possibly contaminating the water. So be aware that you don't want any light hitting the water that you're storing. And then of course, on the other side, two 4-inch overflow pipes, 90 degrees coming out, and that will eventually go to a basin that we'll dig out for growing trees.
And then our rafters. So these were just 2x10 pieces of lumber cut to span across the opening at the top. And you can't see it in this picture, but we did cut the ends so that it created an angle, which would make a slope for the roof. And then we burned the wood and oiled it, which helps protect it and preserve it.
And the ferro cement roof. We covered those rafters and the top of the gabion. It's about 4 layers of a stucco mesh. And then you can see I cut a little hole over at the top for the entrance. Then what the ferro cement is just a sand cement mixture in a 3-to-1 ratio. And then it was just all applied by hand and with trowels. That took a lot of time as well.
Yes, it did. So we learned some good lessons from this project. One was the Earthbag building. Our first major bag project that we've done. And it really allowed us to get a good feel for the materials and the techniques used before we started building our house, which is also being built out of earth bags. So that really helped us get that experience. And then also building with ferro cement, that was the first time we tried anything like that. We did discover that it used a lot of water, especially building at the time of year that we did, which was, it was pretty hot and dry.
Yeah, we did that in June, which is probably the hottest, driest time in Arizona. And then we decided to do a ferro cement top, and the ferro cement just sucks in water like crazy. So it was a challenge not only keeping that moist so that could cure properly, and eventually we ended up covering that between working with tarps to hold that water in.
Yeah.
So some things we would have done differently. So we ended up making a very large cistern, which took a lot of time and a lot of energy to build. I think looking back on it, we might have made multiple smaller cisterns. It would have been much easier to build, wouldn't taken nearly as much time. It'd be a little bit more sustainable. Like if something goes wrong with this cistern, that's the main water supply, and then you're in trouble. So if you have multiple smaller systems, they can be a little bit more manageable. They'll be right at the point of use, so it wouldn't be as catastrophic. We might have gone completely below ground. That would have saved time and energy building the gabion. You have more support with the dirt walls, and possibly more thermal mass to keep the temperature of the water regular. Different roof. So as she was saying, with the ferro cement, it took a lot of time and a lot of water to build with the ferro cement. We were eager to try and use that as a material to kind of play around with it, but ultimately it took a lot more time and a lot more water than we would have liked. So I think it would have been maybe more efficient to use metal or right on the top of the cistern. And then we could have used ferro cement just for those gutter portions. And that would have saved a lot of time, a lot of energy. And then, yeah. And then build sooner, it would have been this past monsoon season was incredibly dry. It was almost a monsoon.
Mhm.
And we barely got any water in the cistern. Had we built it in with the previous monsoon season, I mean, there would have been a ton of water in there. So that's just like one of those lessons. If you're going to be dependent on rainwater, get these systems in place as soon as you can.
Yeah, and plan for the dry periods if you can.
Mhm.
So if you're wondering how the cistern is working so far, well, since it's been a dry year, we haven't had much of a chance to test it out. We've collected a little bit of water in there, and so far it's holding, which is good. But we're not done with building yet. It still needs a little bit of work, fine tuning. The cement is not as level as we would like it to be. So we'd like to kind of level that off so that it drains a lot more efficiently, and maybe seal it to help get as much water as we can too. And we'd like to upgrade our access hatch to give it a better fit and maybe a nicer look to match the cistern.
What?
Our plans for this year, right now we're working on building our house out of earth bags. And the cistern is going to be plumbed right into the house. So when we get that done, we'll get to the test, and hopefully we'll have a lot more water in the cistern at that time. We're also redoing our gutter system, getting prepared for the next monsoon season. Hopefully we get a lot of rain.
Cross your fingers. Everybody.
And we want to make this rainwater harvesting system better than ever.
Mhm. I plan on putting some mesh over that access hatch, and then going over that with ferro cement so that it fits a little better and kind of blends in with the roof.
That should be cool.
So, yeah, thank you for listening to our presentation. I guess probably open it up to questions now.
Yeah, we can answer any questions you guys have. I think one question we might have for you is, have you ever drank rainwater? Some nice, clean, filtered rainwater. And what did you think of that?
All right, that poll should be up. I'm getting about a 50-50 right now. I've got half say yes, half say no. So, and if you do have a question, I have allowed for you to unmute yourself if you would like to speak up and ask those questions, or you can type them in the chat as well.
Hi, I have a question. Two questions, I guess. So if you don't have a house right now that's not, it's not built yet, what are you harvesting water off of? And second question, what are your plans for filtering or treating the rainwater so that it's, safe to drink and use?
Great questions. Yeah, one of the first things we built out here, one of the major projects, was a rain roof. So it's over 100 feet long. I think it's 110 feet by 20 feet. And so it provides a lot of surface area for us to collect rainwater off of. It also provides some shade in the summer, which is nice. And as far as filtering, right now, we just have a hose filter so that we use that when we pump water from our storage containers into the trailer that we're living in while we're building the house. And then we use just a Berkey filter for drinking water. But for the house, we're going to have extra filtration, right?
Yeah. And the hose filter was really a new addition. For a while, we were only using the Berkey. When we have the house set up, we'll probably have a little bit more of a robust filtration system, going through like a multi-stage filter before it even hits our pump.
This is rainwater, by the way.
Can you describe the rainwater roof? Is that just like a ramada? Sorry, my son's talking. Just a ramada of metal, or I'm really curious about that idea of like making us an easy to build surface to harvest water off of instead of making a giant house, for instance.
Yeah, so one of the we were living out here with just a few RVs. So the idea was to kind of make kind of like a carport shade structure to give and when we moved out here, there were more than just us, but it'll give us the people out here, which is now just me and her, shaded area to kind of do some work in, to kind of hang out in. And then it's just almost kind of like a giant carport. So we can park our vehicle under there, we can keep materials out of the rain, and then it provides a nice surface for catching that rainwater.
So basically it's just a lot of posts in the ground and rafters and then metal sheet roofing over that. And we did build like little mini gabions around the posts too for extra like anchoring.
Mhm.
Well,
I think
thank you.
I think in the photo you guys had in your presentation, it looked like it was probably 10 to 15 feet deep. And how wide was it? How long?
110.
Okay, so you've got quite a bit of square footage then.
I did some calculations. I mean, it's like 0.62 gallons. You get 0.62 gallons for every square foot of catchment you have. And what was it for like an inch of rain? It was like almost around 1,300 gallons
Yeah.
per inch of rain.
One monsoon would fill your almost your cistern if we had any.
That's right.
And what do you expect the life expectancy of the cistern to be?
Well, I know the liner is guaranteed for, is it 20 years?
Yeah.
So at least that, but we're hoping, since it is all protected and covered from the, the sun and everything, hoping like 50 to 100.
Yeah, I'm hoping that this has longevity. I think the weakest part is probably the liner. But yeah, but since it is protected from the sun, it could potentially last quite a while.
I had a question regarding if you guys have tips for sourcing. I thought that was very resourceful to get the misprinted feed bags. Did you have to search long and hard for that, or do you have like a secret source of sustainable materials?
No, not a secret source. Luckily, we had a neighbor that was interested in doing earthbag construction, so we didn't have to do a whole lot of searching. We were able to get that information from them. We actually put a video together, and we have that information on all the contact information from the company where we got the bags from, and also where we got the liner from. So people can check that out. But I think it's called like Pacific Packaging Company.
Okay.
And it never pays to hurt to do a little bit of research and find something. You never know. But like packaging companies is kind of what you want to look for.
It sounds, we didn't see you filling them, but it looked quite, that part also looked quite labor intensive.
Quite daunting.
Did you fill those with a shovel, or did you have something that tilted and filled?
All done by hand,
All
so
done by
you
hand?
just
How are your hands?
plug it with shovel.
Surprisingly, not too bad.
You need
That's good.
gloves, good gloves.
Let me see if there's a question in the chat. Just
I
jump
have-
in if anyone has a question.
I have one more. I have a lot of questions. Sorry.
That's fine.
Did you, for both your house and the cisterns, do you find that because I saw you excavated it, they're going to be sunken in a little bit, I assume the house as well. Do you dig out enough dirt to fill the dirt, like the earth bags, or do you have to get more dirt from other places? How's that work?
Yeah.
that is gonna be the probably $1 million question.
We'll find out when we're done with the house, but so far we've had enough dirt, and that is, I think, one of the reasons why we decided to go down, just to
Mhm.
have that material available.
Yep. And it kind of kills like two birds with one stone. Not only can we kind of utilize those underground areas, but then yeah, give us the soil to build with.
Yeah.
When you
Hopefully
dig
it'll
down,
last
though,
throughout the whole.
right. When you dig down, you do the earth bags from like all the way down, right? Like in the ground, not like from the soil level. Like you put them on the floor, essentially what your house would be. Is that, or do you start like, at the surface, I guess is my question.
Oh, as far as like a foundation, we did dig, well, for the house, we did dig a trench, and we filled that with gravel, and that provides drainage for the structure. And then we lay the bags on top of that.
Yeah, so there's like two sections for each part of the house, an underground section, and that got a trench that we put the earth bags in, and then we built a cylinder underground, so for the underground portion of the house, and then we'll be building a dome on top of that, which also has kind of like a rubble gravel trench.
Mhm.
Cool, thank you.
So with your dirt, Arizona dirt is full of rocks. How are you sifting through that? How are you getting, because I'm doing a very, very, very small project, and I'm struggling to figure out how to get the big rock, not the big rocks, but most of the rocks out of the dirt to put just dirt back into some terraces.
Yeah, well, I think at first when we started building, we tried sifting. We built a sifter to try to get the rocks out, and we kind of gave up on that because there's so many rocks. So we left a lot of the small things in, which is fine for this kind of building, just kind of gravelly pieces. And we've just been picking the larger rocks out by hand, and anything that might be sharp that we don't want in the bags.
And for us, that's just kind of speeding up the process. With earth bag building, if there are small gravelly size rocks, that's not going to affect things too much. It might even make the build a little stronger that it has, this aggregate in there. But if we're going to do cob, then yeah, we're going to have to pull out the sifter and get a little bit more of that gravelly pieces out of there.
Where did you guys purchase or did you make your own sifter?
Yep, just with some hardware cloth
Yeah.
sandwiched in between a couple of some boards as like a little frame. Very easy to do. And then we customized it to fit on top of our Gorilla cart, so we could shovel dirt on top of there, sift it, and then we'd have the dirt ready to go.
Oh, cool. The design of the cistern, did you guys just kind of like dream it up, or were you adapting another place's design, or how did it come to be what it was?
Yeah.
A little bit of both.
Yeah,
I
I
mean-
think we kind of worked out the design as we went along. We kind of wanted to do something with earth bags because we wanted to get more familiar with that material. And then we were like, well, how do we make this work with earth bags? So I think I found a couple other examples of people who have done that. And then we figured out, well, we might need a pond liner. And then we're like, how do we do a roof on this?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people have been doing different kind of cisterns, and we could have done like a ferro cement cistern. I know people have done earth bag cisterns, but they usually use the continuous bags, and sometimes they use crushed limestone as a filler instead of regular earth, which is an interesting technique, because as the crushed limestone gets wet, it actually turns into like a solid, harder rock.
Maybe too hard. Brittle. But interesting. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna shamelessly plug my new publications right now, because they're very apropos what you guys are doing. And unfortunately, they're not quite out there yet, but they will be in very soon. They're in publication there at the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension Publications will be there soon. If you want copies, email me, please. I will put my email in the chat. One is Preparing Rain for Potable Use, which discusses a lot of the different ways to filter and disinfect water. And the other is Choosing Large-Scale Rain Harvesting. And I loved the reasons that you guys gave for choosing rain harvesting over a well in your area, because yeah, the water levels are dropping and expensive. So I think this publication has tried to help people decide if choosing large scale rain harvesting is the right way for them to go. And I also loved your discussion of mindfulness, because that's kind of a byproduct of doing something that you need. You know, you need water and you have to have it to drink, and we need these things. But you also bring in another element, which is just being in touch with nature and the cycles of nature. And that I just think is a great byproduct of providing for your own needs, is this, you know, sensitivity to our world, our environment, how we're going to go forward taking care of it. I think being mindful of it and in touch with it, I thought was a really beautiful thing that you explained. That's what we need, I believe, you know, to be more part of nature, the cycles. And it's not that mystical. I mean, it is and it isn't, but it's like you're just watching how much rain's coming down and looking at the water. I thought that was wonderful. So I know that they have done studies of rainwater harvesting because they were imposed in some areas in Australia. You had to do it. And one of the byproducts of it that people termed as a benefit was that they learned something. And you don't usually think of that as like necessarily a benefit. It's just sort of what happens. And they were like, no, that was great. We loved learning something. And I think that's also part of what is so fun about how you guys are doing it, how you're living, is like you have this ongoing, like, you know, learning and, you know, expanding your understanding of things, and it's very dynamic, and I love it. It's great. Thank you all for coming. We really enjoyed it, having you learn and learn from these special people. Thank you, Green Team, Green Dream.